Hi, this was supposed to get on in December. Caden here. You've probably seen an abandoned house. You know, door falling off, windows broken, creaking floorboards, rotting wood. I think you get the picture. Now, imagine that, but with a monster in it. Ooh, spooky, right? Haunted houses have dominated the horror genre for, well, basically since the beginning of the horror genre, and usually the haunted house is paired with ghosts. This is a classic pairing that all old horror movies use. The Exorcist, The Poltergeist, The Shining, the list goes on, but what makes this pairing work so well? Well, of course there's the easy stuff to pin down, like the ghost giving the immediate scare of it hopping out and doing ghost things. Oh my god! Or it looming around in the background being spooky. Now while the ghost being spooky is a pretty obvious scare, why is the house scary? Now, to find an answer to that question, I'll pose another question. I know, classic essayist move, but why are we scared of the past? I know that sounds ridiculous. Scared of the past, no, me, never, is probably what you're thinking right now. But then, why does the ghost work? Because what is the ghost but the past coming back to haunt us? So then I'll ask again, why are we scared of the past? And why are we so infatuated with that fear? The phrase haunted house implies an inherent personhood within the house. Being haunted is an inherently human thing, and to be haunted is for something to constantly come back, usually for your detriment. But it also implies that some kind of soul is lingering, something that was there and still is there, but shouldn't be. When we call a house haunted, it almost seems like the house is a living being, which once lived but now has died and has been resurrected by something greater than itself. On the same side of this coin is the abandoned house, not haunted by anything, but instead left to rot. It carries the same human characteristics of the haunted house except for one key difference. Where the haunted house has died and has been resurrected by its soul, the abandoned house has become a corpse with no soul inside of its dormant walls. Yet, there is a similarity between these two houses. They linger in the past. The haunted house refuses to let go of the past and thus is brought back to life. The abandoned house is a rotting corpse, a reminder of a bygone era. Both of these creations are from humanity, which embeds them with a soul, or lack thereof. To define the soul of a house is something we simply cannot do, but it is much easier to define the soul of a home. The soul of a home is somewhere where we choose to live our lives. We give it love and affection, we tend to it, we paint its walls, we cook in it. It's an extension of us. To put simply, the soul of a home is a human one. But in this life, we can bring it death, and we can choose, unlike people, to abandon these places and leave them for somewhere more suitable. Now, when we abandon a home, what does the soul become? I believe it becomes haunted houses. The energy and movement of people, but without people, places that stay static to the era when they were constructed. Now, these hauntings tied down just to one home by its lonesome is nothing. A single abandoned or haunted house sitting dormant doesn't mean much. Sure, it may have been lived in, and it may have been someone's everything, but it's just one person. What harm is done by that? A single person losing their home, sad, but it happens. But what if it was entire towns? What happens when so many people decide that a place is no longer worth living in, no longer worth spending the affection, nor worth the time to take care of? Well, what happens then? That's how we get ghost towns. The ghost town has been around since people started making towns and then abandoning them. This abandonment has been around for as long as the Mesa Verde cliff dwellings in Colorado. These pueblos hidden within the walls of the Mesa Verde were home to ancestral Puebloans, who lived there for hundreds of years before being pushed out by drought, war, and general bad vibes. This abandonment issue wouldn't leave the south with the Puebloans. In fact, it would be pushed further with boomtowns. A boomtown, for those who don't know or haven't been in a history class, is a town that would pop up for mining purposes and then quickly be abandoned afterwards. One of the most famous boomtowns has to be Jerome, Arizona. Jerome was built on a vast mountain of copper, which of course would bring the many to it in search of fame and fortune. This fame and fortune would cost many lives, and at some point in Jerome's history, it will be named the wickedest town in the West due to the high death toll from the mines. Despite being so deadly, it would become a mixing pot of all sorts of people. American, Mexican, native Chinese, wives and children, preachers and sinners, all came to Jerome in search of something, but slowly the town would decay due to the copper becoming less needed. But during World War II, Jerome would become a major producer of copper, apparently bringing out over 3 million pounds of copper per month. But this town, like many others, was built off the fact that there was mineral to mine and nothing else, so obviously once the mineral runs dry, so does the want to live there. No money, no town, and eventually Jerome's population would fall as low as 90 people in the entire town. So to solve this issue, the residents would begin to advertise Jerome as Arizona's biggest ghost town, and it worked! The town was alive again. Tourists flocked in and out to learn about the lively history of Jerome and the inner workings of the mines. And now about 450 people live in Jerome in 2023, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering that the town could just be gone, it sounds a lot better than that. Now, Jerome being alive and well sounds fine and dandy, but what about the other 3,799 ghost towns in the US? Why didn't they get a second chance? What about all these towns on the Rust Belt? What happens to them when they can't be saved by tourists or artists? Well, to answer that, I'll take you to the fictional but very, very real Possum Springs. Night in the Woods is an indie game developed by Infinite Falls. It takes place in the fictional town of Possum Springs, Pennsylvania. We play as 20-year-old May Borowski, a college dropout and proud crime doer. She returns to Possum Springs after feeling the crushing weight of college and adulthood, and in returning to Possum Springs, she hopes to take comfort in her old friends and pass away the time, however she feels. However, everything around her has changed. Her friend Greg, once carefree and always up to do whatever, now has a job and is busy all of the time and has plans to leave Possum Springs with his boyfriend for good. B, who was one of May's closest friends, has grown cold and distant. She feels like May has wasted her one chance to leave for a better life, in turn disrespecting the chance B wants so desperately, but she's tied down by her father's business, the old pickaxe, constantly having to keep up with everything, yet being paid almost nothing in return. May lives in the past, quite literally, as Possum Springs feels stuck in the past, or as May says, eternally 2 decades behind. During the duration of the game, you'll hear countless stories, but so many told by the residents are of the past. Rosa, an old woman who hangs out in the old trolley tunnels, offers to tell you stories of May's granddad, describing a party that took place where May's granddad vandalized a shitty boss's car before running off into the woods with Rosa. Mr. Chazikov, May's high school astronomy teacher, will ask you to go on dust star hunting with him every 2 days to look for constellations, and when you find them, he'll tell you stories and myths about them. One of them being about Sterling the Steer, a mage who knew of the stars being kicked out by the king because of the arrival of a new mage, an astronomer who gave the king reason as to why the stars move and when they did. One of my personal favorites being the story of Erkinson, the firemaker. Erkinskin is a wanderer in a cold and dark land who huddles next to a fire during the night for warmth. This is the only comfort that Erkinskin knows. Then we have May herself. She's always recollecting on her old high school escapades with Greg or stories told by her granddad. She never looks forward, she never tries to see a future, she's stuck. And this feeling of being stuck is also replicated in the gameplay. Every day you'll get up, explore town, and talk to the same people. Sometimes you'll go outside of town or explore some new place, but most of the time you'll be doing the same loop. And for the residents of Possum Springs, they feel the same. The town's rotting. In simple terms, that's what it is. Possum Springs is the archetype of a rundown small town. It was a mining town. It used to be something, but not anymore. It's gone, but for some reason it still stands there, waiting for something to happen to it, whether that be death or revival. Just like the old trolley tunnels, wiped away by a flood, something greater than itself, and something it couldn't at all predict or stop. For Possum Springs, the flood was time, and because of this, Possum Springs was left in the past. There truly is no future for a town so stuck in the past like Possum Springs, but May decides to return anyways. Why? Why return to a place that is rotting, a place with no future, a place stuck in the past, and not a particularly great one at that? Why? Because the past is worth remembering. Rosa retells these stories to May because they bring her joy and memories of what it was like to be young and alive, what it was like to be able to tell the world to go screw itself when she was able to fight back against the future and not worry about the past, only living in the present. Chazikov tells the stories of the stars because he thinks they are worth retelling, that the morals still hold up today, that we could learn to warm each other in a cold and dark land, and if it takes reminiscing, then it does not matter. And finally, May. She chooses to remember because she wants to be young and naive. Many times, May tries to talk to people still in school, the teenagers in the tunnels, or Lori Myers, a teenager who hangs around town. May wants those memories of a better time, a time of discovery and fun. Just like Sterling, it was a simpler time. But these simpler times, as shown in Sterling's stories, can lead to dark places. During the duration of the game, we find out the murky past of the town. During a mining expedition, an explosion would occur 10 miles underground in the Stafford mine. While 3 men would make it out alive, 20 would be pulled out, dead. Another team trying to rescue more men would plummet to their deaths when the elevator cord snapped. A year later, the rest of the bodies would be recovered, but due to the absolutely horrific working conditions still not being improved, the miners would go on strike. This strike would last 45 days, with women, children, and even other union miners joining in on the strike, and the miners would eventually get the safety they needed, but at a very heavy cost. Sometime during the strike, a small scuffle would break out, causing the National Guard to be brought in, and on the 30th day of the strike, after bosses arrived to try to rearrange some of the wishes of the miners, rocks would be thrown at the National Guard, and in cold blood, the National Guard would open fire on the crowd. 9 miners died, and a dozen more were injured, but among the casualties are a pair of young siblings, shot dead in the crossfire while attempting to deliver food to their uncle. At the end of the game, it is revealed that a cult has been formed around the same old mines where these strikes took place. They are obsessed with the ideology of the miners, so they throw people who they deem have no future into a pit, and their god blesses them with the town blossoming for a short period. They are literally sacrificing the future to relive the past. More so than me, these people want not only to live in the past, they want the past to be the present. They yearn for the simpler times and try to recreate it by sacrificing the future. But the past they attempt to relive is a dangerous one where women and children must be shot dead to acquire one's needs. This is a past we fear, something that you don't want to remember, something that hurts to remember. This is a past that haunts you. The mines of Possum Springs are truly haunted. But this past has no power if it is the present, because to be able to think back on previous experiences and reflect on those choices is a truly human thing to do. It is something we can only do. If we were never to let these things from the past go, then we would never have anything to recollect on. We have to let go. And as May beautifully puts it, when I die, I want it to hurt. When my friends leave, when I have to let go, when this entire town is wiped off the map, I want it to hurt bad. I want to lose. I want to get beaten up. I want to hold until I am thrown off and everything ends. And you know what? Until that happens, I want to hope again. And I want it to hurt. Because that means it meant something. We can't forget these feelings, but we can let go of those feelings. We should not idealize a past where women and children die in mining strikes, but we need to remember that these things happen in order to change and grow. If we were to forget about every ghost town, every haunted house, every Possum Springs, what would that do? It would cause all of the history and emotion and soul built up over those years to disappear from Possum Springs. All of that human likeness is gone in a flash. Forgetting the soul of a home turns into nothing but a piece of infrastructure, so to forget the past turns into nothing at all. We cannot simply live without acknowledging the past and what the people who've died, like those in Jerome and those in the mining strikes of actual history, have done. Whether it is something dramatically big like helping win a war, or causing corruption to lose power, or something small like the apple crate full of May's granddad's old ghost stories. But of course, we cannot live in the past either. We will need to let go at some point, because letting go means you can move on and make new memories. Memories that will become the past, and memories that you'll be able to reflect on. Letting go lets you move on, and letting go also means those memories meant something to you. We won't forget the past, because to do that is to ignore the existence of a soul, and to ignore the soul is to ignore the human experience as a whole. But we will not live in the past, because that ignores the possibility of a future and the possibility of change and growth. Thank you for watching.